will you get that, hon? Will you get that phone for me, please? Hey, this is my favorite show. This is the best. This is funny. This is the best part right here.
Yeah, I know.
No, I got it. It's okay. I got it.
Hello? No, you have the wrong number. Oh, Maynard. Why don't we get a portable phone? That way we won't have to get up. We can just sit here.
I mean to get one of them things.
Martha and Maynard live in a society that places a high value on self-control. The self-made person has been an American ideal since our early beginnings as a nation.
Reflecting on this ideal, most parents and teachers would agree that an objective of our educational process is to create individuals who are self-reliant and independent. Parents and teachers will need to take joint responsibility in order for this to occur.
Martha and Maynard are supposed to be goal-oriented, self-actualized, and well-rounded.
You know, Martha, you are out of shape. We ought to do something about that.
Well, maybe they are well-rounded. Other catchphrases like self-sufficient, self-confident, and self-esteem are sprinkled throughout our daily life.
And yet, curriculum and learning activities targeted at increasing responsibility for learning are not systematically programmed into most educational systems, nor is this a skill that most parents routinely address at home.
The burden of responsibility rests almost entirely on the teacher, who must decide what is to be taught, when instruction is to be scheduled, how material is to be presented, and by what means learning will be confirmed, reinforced, recorded, and evaluated.
To a degree, this is as it should be, but when every aspect of learning and behavior is controlled by the teacher or parent, individuals can become so dependent that generalization of newly acquired behaviors into different settings does not take place.
Transferring much of the responsibility to the students by teaching them to self-manage certain aspects of their learning frees the teacher to devote more time to instruction, individualized planning, and one-on-one assistance. It heightens student motivation for learning and enhances self-esteem.
Furthermore, self-management blends well with and relates to many existing instructional programs, including those designed to improve social skills, study skills, peer or partner teaching, and cooperative learning.
In a broader sense, self-management provides individuals with what is perhaps the transitional skill. In fact, learning to self-manage is an important learning from school years that can transfer to the world of work.
The ability to identify problems, select possible solutions, judge the seriousness of the problem, and decide how to change it are all inherent to success.
During this presentation on self-management strategies, you will be asked to refer to the packet that accompanies this videotape. Be sure that you have it in front of you at this time.
You will also be asked to self-monitor your own behavior during this videotape presentation. A self-management checklist can be found on the last page of your packet for this purpose. Remove the page from your packet at this time.
You will use this page to check off the practice activities that you complete during this program. This will help you to keep track of your progress through the presentation and would be similar to a self-management system that a student could use to monitor their work completion. You should now mark off item number 1 on your checklist.
This video presentation will provide you with validated strategies for dealing with self-management problems. Specifically, the objectives for this presentation will include the following. You will be able to 1. Define self-management. 2. Describe the components of target behaviors. 3. Count and record behavior. And 4. Teach students to count, record, and manage their own behavior. These objectives are found on page 1 of your packet.
Let's begin with a definition for self-management. Refer to the middle of page 1 in your packet. Self-management refers to the ability of individuals to take on responsibilities for changing certain personal behaviors. Self-management also involves the personal and systematic application of strategies that result in the desired modification of one's behavior.
For example, think about ways that you manage your time or your daily activities. How do you remember to bring certain materials to a meeting, or how do you go about preparing for a meeting? How do you keep track of your own activity schedule, work schedules, or family schedules?
You know, Maynard, if you're really serious about this shape-up business, then we need to make some kind of a schedule and put it up. So, what do you want to do tomorrow night?
How about we have some pizzas, some nachos, and then we'll sit down and watch one of those Jane Fonda tapes.
Okay.
All of these behaviors involve a certain amount of self-management on your part in order to be successful in the home, school, or work environment. It may seem rather obvious to you why it is important to teach self-management skills. Remember, however, self-management skills have not been systematically programmed into most educational systems.
Let's examine some important reasons for teaching self-management procedures to students in school settings. These are listed on the bottom of page 1 in your packet. Acting independently is a skill valued and expected by our culture. Teachers and parents cannot always deliver tangible reinforcement. There is more time for other teaching activities when the student exercises self-control. The student can learn and behave effectively when adult supervision is not available. And teaching and establishing self-control may lead to more durable behavioral changes than relying solely on external means of control.
Now let's look at some students who are managing their own behavior through self-recording procedures. Here you see a student using a card to monitor her class attendance and tardies.
In this example, the student is monitoring independent, on-task behavior by counting and recording small units of work completed during math.
During this class, the student is improving completion rates on long-term homework assignments by self-monitoring.
And the next thing, look here, it says due date. So it's due when?
I don't know.
It's due Friday.
Here you see a student self-monitoring to increase classroom participation during psychology discussions.
And so if you're not sure of something, you need to ask a question about it,
Okay.
right?
Answered questions.
You usually do real well there. So if I call on you and you know what's going on and you answer the question, you'd mark a check there.
Yeah.
Great.
In this example, students are self-checking the required materials necessary for being prepared in biology.
Now you see on the sheet here that says brought to class, pen or pencil. You all remember to bring your pen and pencil. So what are you going to mark there? Check. Check.
In this situation, a small group of students are self-charting assignments completed during independent work time.
Do you know what I'd like to see, class? That's what I'd like to see on all of us, is I'd like to see 100% every day that we do our assignments, that we do those problems. That's what we're going to work for. Okay. You've got your 20, which is 100%, and now Janae is green, and she is at 80% for Monday.
In this example, young children are wearing a card around their neck on a piece of yarn. This technique will help prevent students from losing the card. As you see, the students get a punch in their card when they move to the next center or activity within a specified time period.
Here you see students who are developing more appropriate skills for getting the teacher's attention.
And what we want to do is we want to have more marks here, don't we? So this is where we want all of our marks. We don't want to get any marks over here because that's not what we want to do. That's not the appropriate way to get my attention. Yeah, you raised your hand, so you mark one right in that box.
Students mark on the picture card under the cartoon that depicts their behavior.
Let's suppose you want to assist students to assume more responsibility in monitoring their behavior. What will be involved? How will you go about setting up a program that will be successful?
The following procedure will be helpful as you begin to develop a self-management program for yourself, your own children, or classroom students. This procedure is outlined on page 2 of your packet. Look at each of the steps. Step 1. Selecting a behavior area for self-monitoring. Step 2. Describing the behavior in observable terms and determining the appropriate counting period. Step 3. Setting performance standards for correct and incorrect behavior or appropriate and inappropriate behavior. Step 4. Determining a counting and recording procedure. And step 5, making decisions.
Now let's talk more specifically about each step. The first step is to select the general behavior area that you want to self-monitor. This may be an academic, social, or personal behavior area. Refer to page 3 in your packet where you see some possible skills listed under each general behavior area. It's important to pick an area which needs improvement.
At this point, you will also need to determine priorities. In other words, what general behavior area will be addressed first. Look at the example in the box on the bottom of page 3. It is recommended that only one behavior in an area be worked on at a time.
Now turn to page 4 in your packet. Here again you will see a menu of behavior categories. These are organized into academic, social, and personal behaviors. Think about behaviors that you might select for a self-management program. When deciding on a behavior to change, it is helpful to select one which occurs often. These high-frequency behaviors are easier to change.
Read through the list of behavior categories on that page and mark those that may be of concern to you or your students. Prioritize the behaviors you have checked. Then discuss your ideas with a partner, your group, or your facilitator. Stop the tape and complete the activity on page 4. Remember to mark item number 2 on your self-management checklist when you complete this practice activity.
The second step is to describe the behavior.
Okay, Maynard, I made this for us to get in shape, and I'm going to hang it up here so that we can remember.
During this step, you will need to describe the specific components of the behavior in observable terms and define the counting period.
So how will we do it, though? What can we do? I mean, we can quit eating, but what else could we do?
Didn't you buy one of those exercycles last year?
Ooh, uh-huh.
It's out in the garage.
Okay, so if we do that, how many times a week should we do that?
What do you think, 3 times a week? Does that make sense?
Okay, that's good.
The success of your self-management program will largely depend on this step. Let's first discuss describing the specific behavioral components.
There should be no question as to what correct and incorrect performance looks like. You will need to describe what is meant by attendance or materials brought or not brought to class, appropriate and inappropriate ways to gain an adult's attention, making the bed, doing the dishes, taking out the garbage, and so on. Look at example A on page 5. Attendance has been clearly defined. Now look at the following list of behaviors. Could you count Karen is immature, Bruce is lazy, Mary is not prepared, Rick has a bad attitude, Susan acts inappropriately, Nancy doesn't listen, Angela's room is a mess?
The answer to all these questions is no. These behaviors are not observable. They have not been clearly described. They are either descriptions or labels which could likely be defined differently by different observers. They are almost impossible to count in their present form and would be equally difficult to change.
Now look at these behaviors. Could you count Karen cries, Bruce writes words, Mary brings paper, pencil, and book to class, Rick says positive comments to peers and teachers, Susan hugs strangers, Nancy follows a teacher direction within 5 seconds, Angela hangs up all of her clothes in her closet each morning by 8 a.m.?
The answer to all these questions is yes. These behaviors are observable. They have been clearly described, and occurrences and non-occurrences could easily be noted.
Let's talk about 2 dimensions for describing behaviors in specific, observable, and manageable components. It will be important to decide on the scope of the behavior. This means determining the number of behavioral components that will adequately describe the behavior to be increased and the behavior to be decreased.
Another dimension of describing behavior involves identifying the behavior pairs. That is, the correct and the incorrect behavior or the appropriate and inappropriate behavior. The behavior pairs go together. As one increases, the other decreases.
Maynard, look what I have. This is so great. We're going to chart how we're doing. On this side, we're going to put that we're going to increase the amount of time spent exercising. Well, this will be great, Maynard. And on this side, we'll count what we're going to decrease, which will be watching TV and eating. Great, huh?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now hold on, Martha. Don't you think this is a little bit drastic? I was thinking more along the lines of cutting back 1 chip a day until I get back to a reasonable amount.
Get serious, Maynard. Here are your sweats.
Look at the bottom of page 5. Let's translate the idea of scope and behavior pairs to completing work. One teacher may choose to describe the scope of this behavior as words written on the page during the seat work assignment in English. The scope of the behavior to be decreased may be described as items not completed.
Another teacher may describe the scope of completing work as bringing paper, pencil, notebook to each class and the number of pages completed correctly during the class period. This teacher would like to decrease not completing worksheets or not bringing materials to class.
Let's look at another example, teaching the skill of introducing yourself. The scope of this behavior could be defined into 3 components. Look at the person, say the person's name, and then say, "My name is." The behavior to be decreased would be an error in any of these steps.
However, another person may define the scope of this behavior into 5 observable components. Look at the person, smile, say greeting, say the person's name, and then say, "My name is." Notice that an inappropriate response would occur if an error was made in any one of the behavioral components.
It should also be noted that some behaviors can be defined into too many components or not enough components. Related to this point, it is also important to make sure that the self-monitoring of the behavioral components will be manageable. Keep it simple.
Now refer to the practice activity on page 6 of your packet. Here you are to describe the scope for each behavior listed into specific observable components. Be sure to describe the components for the behavior pairs, correct or appropriate behavior, as well as the incorrect or inappropriate behavior. Discuss your behavioral descriptions with a partner. Remember, different people may describe the scope in different ways. The important point is that your description includes observable components, behavior pairs, and is manageable. Stop the tape and complete this activity now.
How did you do? Remember to mark an item on your own checklist for completing an activity. Look at the way in which one person chose to describe each of the behaviors. Compare your behavioral components with these.
Now refer back to the behavior you selected on page 4. Describe the scope of this behavior in specific terms. Complete the activity by writing your description on the bottom of page 6. Then discuss it with a partner, your group, or your facilitator. Make sure that your behavior components are clearly described for both the behavior you want to increase as well as decrease. Stop the tape and complete this activity.
How did you do? Did you remember to mark an item on your self-monitoring checklist for completing this practice activity? Did you describe the scope and specify the behavior pairs?
Now look at the top of page 7. Describing the behavior also includes defining the counting period. The counting period is the amount of time you spend each day counting the behavior. The length of the counting period depends on the behavior and may be as short as 1 minute or as long as 24 hours. The important thing is that the counting period remains the same each day.
Look at the examples of behaviors and counting periods on page 7. Notice that different behaviors require different counting periods. A 50-minute counting period would work in some classrooms for counting math problems completed. A 4-hour counting period may be appropriate for self-monitoring negative comments made to a sibling between 5 and 9 p.m. each evening.
Think about the counting period for the behavior you have selected and just described. What would be an appropriate counting period? Write down the behavior in the box on the bottom of page 7 and then decide on the appropriate amount of time to count the behavior. Stop the tape and complete the activity on page 7. Remember to mark an item on your self-monitoring checklist when you complete this activity.
Now that you have selected and described the behavior, the third step is to set performance standards. In other words, what does competent performance look like for this behavior, for both correct or appropriate behavior and incorrect or inappropriate behavior? Or, when will I know when I have reached my aim?
Maynard, how will we know if we're making any difference, if we're losing any weight?
Look, I've got an idea. How about this? We'll weigh in every 2 weeks and see how our plan is going.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
Okay, good, good. If we make it 2 weeks.
Although performance standards may differ from one student to the next, the success of the self-management program will in part be due to clear expectations and high standards for acceptable performance. Additional examples of performance standards are listed on page 8.
Notice that Erica's performance standard is 25 math problems during a 50-minute period. However, Heather's performance is 50 problems during a 50-minute counting period.
Look at the bottom of page 8. Now determine appropriate performance standards for the behavior pairs you have chosen. Remember, these performance standards should reflect a level of performance substantially different from the current performance level. Stop the tape and complete the practice activity on page 8.
The next step is to determine a counting and recording procedure. The student should self-count and record occurrences of correct and incorrect behavior each day during the specified counting period, using one of the suggested options found on page 9.
This may range from simple tallying by the student to a cartoon-type count tune or self-management card. Now refer to page 10. We will briefly describe some different forms that students can use for monitoring their own behavior.
This form illustrates a method for daily self-checking of 11 different components related to appropriate behaviors in a secondary classroom. It should be noted that each component has been previously taught. The teacher using this form has identified the important skills that he expects from all students in his classroom.
And things are going pretty well as long as I keep reminding you what you need to do. What I want to do now is to have you remind yourself of some things. This is for the whole week, Monday through Friday, and we have 11 things here that you're going to keep track of. I want you to go through them with me. Just read this.
Went to class.
Okay, so if you go to class, you'll just put a check, and I expect you to be here every day.
Got there on time.
And to be on time, you need to be in the room before the bell rings.
Okay. Brought to class a pen, pencil, notebook, paper, textbook.
Great. And you know what book we've got now, so, all right.
Be on task, working, following directions, completed in-class assignment.
So when I give an assignment for you to work on during class, and that's what we do a lot of each day, you're expected to work on those independently, that means that you'll keep working on your own.
Okay.
And again, that's something you'll just have to remind yourself, and you'll check off what will you write if you are working throughout the class.
Put a check.
Put a check, and if you're not,
Next.
super.
Students are instructed to mark the item with a plus when the behavior occurs correctly. If the behavior does not occur correctly, the student is instructed to mark a minus next to the item. This form will last for 1 week. Think about how you could use or modify this procedure in your setting.
The next example illustrates the count tune, which is a takeoff on a car tune. The pictures used to depict appropriate and inappropriate behavior can be cartoon characters, hand drawings, or actual photographs of the student behaving in the desired and undesired ways. This method would work well for 2 specific behaviors like positive comments and negative comments, smiles and frowns, getting the teacher's attention appropriately, such as a quiet hand raise and talk-outs, which are inappropriate ways of gaining the teacher's attention. This card works well for younger and older students. Progress can be charted on the back side, and the cards can be laminated so they can be reused each day. How might you modify and adapt this technique for your situation?
The example on page 12 is an assignment planner and point card called Watch. W. Write down information. A. Ask yourself questions like, do I understand the assignment? T. Task analyze and schedule. CH. Check each task as you do it for completeness, accuracy, and neatness. This system will work well for students who need to write down their assignments along with due dates and other important informational requirements.
Let's write that down. Good. And the next thing, look here, it says due date. So it's due when?
I don't know.
It's due Friday. Great. And what you do here on these are write down each of the things that you need to do. So we're writing you can write some more directions, any special requirements. And there aren't any in this case. So right here is a question, do I understand the assignment? Do you understand this assignment?
Yeah.
Okay, then you can mark off that you do. And the next question, what's that say?
Do I need to ask for help?
You need any assistance to get started or any ideas?
No.
Okay, and you can mark, just put a no in there. All right, so Monday, you'd mark, what would help, okay, if it's 5 pages due on Friday, what do you think you'd need to have by the end of today done?
A page?
Yeah, page. So write down that you're going to have 1 page done. All right, so then at the end of class, you'll look here, and there's some points here that I'll explain at the end of class how you can mark these down. There's some citizenship points, which is just participating and working through the period, and then these watch points, which are the points you get for writing these down and then to have that 1 page done at the end. And these points will just help you work through so that you'll be ready to turn this in on Friday.
Look at the questions in the box. Underneath the questions, there is space for the student to write down a sequence of daily activities leading up to submitting the assignment. There is an area where points can be awarded for specific I can behaviors related to citizenship and completing the daily activities. While this tactic was written to apply to assignment completion, the same techniques could be applied with any behavior or set of behaviors which need to be brought under control.
Now turn to the example on page 13. Notice that the behavior has been written in terms of a student objective in the lower right-hand corner. This technique can be used at home or school. Each number in a column of 50 numbers represents a math problem or task to be completed. The student slashes a number as each problem or task is completed.
You need to write them as you mark them off. Okay, and I'm going to start the timer.
Just the same.
Yeah, just turn it over. You're using it for the other side of the paper.
As you can see, this procedure creates an instant graph which visually displays daily performance. This self-monitoring and self-graphing format can be used for 30 days. Think about other behaviors that could be monitored using this procedure.
The next example on page 14 serves as a 30-day calendar to self-monitor attendance. Students simply mark in the boxes. Monthly totals can be calculated and then charted for a clear visual display of the student's ongoing performance. Certainly, this calendar could be used for a variety of other behaviors.
The example on page 15 can be used to keep a daily chart of the frequency of target behaviors which occur in the classroom or a particular setting. This procedure has been used at different grade levels to monitor group behaviors such as disruptions or assignment completion. Also, students should keep a daily record of their behaviors on 3x5 cards. Performance standards for the group or individual students can be indicated on the bar graph after a few days of data have been collected. Note that individual percentages are indicated by corresponding colors on the bar graph. Class averages have been indicated by the line graph.
I'm going here at 90%. 90%, I'm just going to draw a brown line clear across that. That is what is our goal, is every day I'd like us to get at least 90%, which means you have to do at least 18 problems. 90% is 18 problems with R20. So you can get 90, 95, or 100. So 100 would be fantastic. Look at this on Monday. Who got 90% or better? Bernard. Okay. Now, if we do look at Tuesday, we're going to find out a lot of people. Some more people got above 90%. So that's going to be our goal at 90%. What we can do then when we get through, what I'll do this afternoon is I'll sit down and I'll look at each one of these and I'll add them up and get a class average and I'll mark that over here to see how this group of 5 did.
As students begin to self-monitor, it may be necessary to have a second observer to check or prompt the student until the individual is able to accurately record the behavior independently. Once the individual is aware of their behavior and familiar with the self-counting and recording procedure, it will not be necessary to continue with a second observer or prompt.
The student will continue to count and record the behaviors each day until the performance standard has been reached or until the daily counts indicate that another type of change is necessary.
Now think about the counting and recording procedure that you will use for the behavior you have identified and described. Brainstorm procedures that you think might work in your situation. Discuss these ideas with a partner, group, or your facilitator, and then record your ideas on page 16. Stop the tape and complete this activity.
Finally, the last step in the self-monitoring strategy is to make decisions. It is much easier to make decisions when the data have been transferred to a chart.
Martha! Hey, Martha! Guess what? I've increased my walk to 25 minutes.
That's great, Maynard.
I'm going to chart it up here.
Okay.
Okay, this is great.
The charted data, both corrects and errors, form a picture.
All right. Let's take a minute here to make some decisions to see how this is going, Tara. You've been doing this for 2 weeks. Let's see how you've done. How's it look on there? Tell me how you've done.
Well, most of the time I've been on time. I have 3 tardies.
Okay.
But most of the time I've been on time.
And one of those was before we started this.
Yeah.
So I think that's an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we need to do to keep you coming on time?
Keep on putting checks down.
Sure.
On the check.
That'd be great.
Making sound instructional decisions from data pictures is the most important step in the self-monitoring strategy.
When looking at a chart such as the one found on page 17, one basic question needs to be asked about the picture of performance after 5 or 6 days of self-counting and recording have been completed. Is the behavior improving, maintaining, or getting worse?
Now turn to page 18. Improving pictures can look like any one of these. Notice how the corrects are improving or staying the same in all of these pictures. A maintaining picture looks like this. Maintaining pictures aren't necessarily undesirable. Maintenance can be very important for establishing behavioral habits like exercising, planning, or being prepared. Worsening pictures often look like one of these. Usually the desired behavior is getting worse or staying the same, while the undesirable behavior is increasing or staying the same.
Based upon whether the picture is improving, maintaining, or worsening, You may decide to continue with the current program or change something in order to get better performance. Remember two important things. Ask questions and then make decisions. If some type of a change is necessary, it is best to ask the student what should be changed. In other words, you will find that the learner always knows best.
This is great. This is great.
All right, it's been over a week, Maynard, and look how we've gone up every single day. I think we've got to keep doing this.
We should. We're on our way up. This is fantastic.
Yeah, this is good.
All right.
Let's practice looking at some charted student data. Decide if the student is improving, maintaining, or getting worse. The dots represent correct or appropriate performance, and the X's represent incorrect or inappropriate performance.
Look at the first example. This student is getting worse. The corrects are going down and the errors are going up. Some type of change will be necessary.
Look at the next example. This student is improving because the appropriate behavior is increasing and the inappropriate behavior is decreasing. In this case, the decision would be to continue with the current program. It's working.
Decide what's happening in the next example. These behaviors are maintaining. There is not a great deal of change in the performance over the last several days. Some type of change will be necessary unless the goal for the student is to achieve a maintaining picture of performance.
Turn to page 19 in your packet. Look at the data pictures and indicate what type of picture you see: improving, maintaining, or worsening. Next, decide if a change would be necessary. Then check your answers with the feedback provided at the bottom of that page. Stop the tape and complete this activity now.
We have just discussed a 5-step procedure for developing a self-monitoring program. Select a behavior area. Define the behavioral components and the counting period. Set performance standards for correct and incorrect behavior. Determine the counting and recording procedure that you will use. And finally, make decisions about the data pictures. You have also applied this procedure to develop your own self-monitoring program.
Now we will present and discuss some different ideas for using the self-monitoring strategy. During this part of the presentation, you will hear different suggestions for explaining the strategy to students, as well as see different ways to use the strategy both in and outside of the classroom setting.
First, who should use the self-monitoring strategy? Anyone who wants or needs to monitor or change a behavior can use the strategy. Refer to page 20 in your packet. You will find several uses of self-monitoring listed and described.
A teacher can assist a student to use self-management in a one-on-one situation.
And what we want to have happen is, so as we go through the rest of this quarter, is we're going to see that the dots are going to go up and stay up here. What are going to happen to the X's? Where should they go?
They shouldn't even go.
Right, they should be clear down below the line. You shouldn't have any X's. Now that's what we want to go for. Each day I want you to check with me on that.
Or a teacher may want to implement the strategy with an entire class. There may be self-management behaviors that apply to the entire group, or students may be monitoring different behaviors based upon individual student needs.
All right, class, that was the bell. We're ready to start. Appreciate the way you're on time today, Tara. Great, everybody, super.
Teachers can encourage more parent involvement by introducing them to the self-monitoring strategy.
Mr. Reed, I really appreciate you coming in this afternoon to talk to me about Chad. We've been having a little bit of problem. In fact, I'll have Chad, you want to tell your father what the problem's been?
Been doing homework.
Ah, too much Nintendo maybe. Yeah, that's a possibility. In fact, out of 5 days of assignments that I send home, I'm lucky if I get one assignment back. So to help us with that, what I'd like us to do, if you'd be willing to help me with at home, is we have a little chart here, or a little form that we can use, and this is for the whole month. for each day of the week that we send home an assignment, and I'll send home one every day, Monday through Friday.
Okay, and then what do I need to do?
Okay, what you need to do, so like on Monday, when I send home an assignment, I want you to count the number, this is in math, so I want you to count the number of problems that he completes at home.
Okay.
And on the back side, you'll notice here, on the back side is a chart here. And with the
Okay.
chart, what we can do is like on Monday, we've got it out here for Monday, you just put the number that he's got, the number of problems that he completed.
Oh.
And then we can see a chart. And you'll notice right here, what we have is, because we have a different number of problems every day coming home, we put it in percentages to help us with that.
Okay.
Parents or others can use this strategy in the home environment to monitor academic, personal, or social behaviors. Imagine helping your family and friends to become more responsible by self-monitoring behaviors like studying, completing homework, practicing piano, doing household chores, giving positive verbal comments to siblings, or even exercising.
You know, could I use this same system for chores around the house?
Yes, you could use the same type of thing around the house and keep track of it, but really this is more, I would think the way I've got this one set up is more of an academic. I'm thinking about like what type of chores, just...
Well, taking out the trash, you know, changing the kitty litter, all that kind of stuff.
And does he get to do things?
Yeah, Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has problems doing that? Oh, and you get paid for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me show you something else. Here's just a card. There's another type of system you could use. It's called a yes-no bank. Let me show you how that would look. What we do is just draw a line here, and on one side we put yes. I want you to also to look at this, Chad, and then you can, if you want to, you may want to use this at home.
Yeah.
So then what you do is that every time that you ask Chad, for example, to do something, give me what's something you'd have to do.
Say taking out the trash, huh?
Okay, so you say, Chad, take out the trash. If Chad says yes or says okay and does it, he gets a mark over here.
Okay.
If he says okay and he doesn't do it, he gets a no mark because he didn't do it. Or if he says no. Do you ever say no, Chad?
Sometimes.
Well, if he says no, then he gets a mark over here.
Okay.
And the way it works is, then when you go to your dad and ask your dad for something like, can I have some money to go to the show? Then you can come to the bank
See how well he's
and you can
done.
say, well, what you can do is say, well, because we want him to do everything he's supposed to do. So the goal is to get him so that every time you give him a chore at home, that Chad, you do it. And so the way it'll work is if you have any no's in the no bank, then you'll say no, and you get to mark it off.
Practically anyone can benefit from using a self-monitoring system if a behavior needs to be maintained or changed. For example, keep a self-count of the number of times you exercise each week, or the number of times you praise your child each night.
In addition, certain on-the-job behaviors like comments to secretaries, number of telephone calls, number of important decisions made in a meeting can be monitored daily. Think about some other possible places where a self-monitoring strategy would assist you.
How do you go about explaining the use of the self-monitoring strategy to others? This teacher is demonstrating one way that the self-monitoring card could be explained to a student who needs to change a social behavior. Notice how this teacher clearly models examples and non-examples of the behavior to be counted.
Did you see what I did? Raised my hand. Did I keep quiet?
Yeah.
I waited until the teacher told me or said, hey, what do you want, Mr. Moore? Okay, well, I'm going to practice. Go ahead. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead and sit down. Now, if I raise my hand, is this doing it? Teacher, what's wrong? Thank you. Hey. Fantastic. Everyone who has their hands up, keep your hands up. Just leave it the way it is. If you look around, just quickly look around now, you'll see that's what you're supposed to do. They got their hands up when they want to get my attention or they want me to call on. They got their hands up, they're keeping quiet, and they're waiting for me. So what is it? Yes?
You didn't keep quiet yet, teacher.
Absolutely. What was I saying?
Teacher.
Okay, hands down. Let's try another.
The card that this student will use is pictured on page 21. An example script for explaining the system is also included.
This example is pictured on page 22.
Now you will have an opportunity to explain the use of the self-monitoring strategy. Use the behavior identified earlier, one of the forms found in the packet, and explain the system to a partner. You may want to refer to the sample script on page 23. Stop the tape and complete this practice activity now.
How did you do on this practice activity? Did you remember to record on your own checklist? You will want to practice or rehearse your instructions before presenting the strategy to students. You may also want to give some additional prompted practice to students in recording their own behavior. This will help students to recognize the occurrences or non-occurrences of the target behavior.
You may be wondering how long you or a student should monitor the target behavior. This is an example of one of the important data-based decisions you will need to make.
Generally, you will want to monitor as long as necessary for the desired change in behavior to occur. It may be necessary to periodically monitor certain behaviors after the desired performance has been attained. This periodic checking may serve as a useful technique for maintaining behaviors over a longer period of time.
Finally, students should be encouraged and taught to develop their own self-monitoring procedures for other classes or situations outside the school environment.
You should now be ready to develop and use self-monitoring strategies in your own setting. Check your knowledge by completing the review questions on page 24. Then check your responses with the feedback on the bottom of that page. Stop the tape and complete this activity now.
How did you do on the review questions? If needed, you may want to review segments of this tape as you develop additional self-monitoring programs. Research on the use of self-monitoring techniques has shown that this strategy can be very effective in changing behavior and developing individuals who are self-reliant and independent. You will also find that this strategy can be easily integrated into school or home routines.
Martha, you know, we've been doing pretty good, but to help us reach our goal, I've entered us in a 5K race. Check it out.
Oh, all right, good, Maynard. You know, Maynard, keeping track of our progress has really paid off.
Yeah, you look a lot better.
Now that Martha and Maynard have a strategy for monitoring their own behavior, they have become more self-reliant, self-motivated, and physically fit.